I mean, I'm hardly a streaming expert, to be very clear. Like, I shouldn't be the one advising you. In fact, EposVox watched my streaming setup upgrade video and basically tweeted at me. He's like, "We should talk."
You should, yeah. Why didn't you talk to him first? I'm sure he would
Oh,
have been down.
no.
Yeah, I'm going there. Welcome to Stream Critique LTT edition. So at the time of recording, Linus Tech Tips has just posted a video to their YouTube channel that is a modified version of something they posted last week to Floatplane, which is Linus upgrading his streaming setup.
As many of you have noticed, there's a stark difference between the quality of the videos that I shoot in the studio with my staff and the quality of the videos that I shoot at home by myself.
Much of the LTT staff has been working from home, as have a lot of people, and thus the WAN show and other content that Linus makes needs to be done from home, and his streaming setup was nothing amazing. So he's set forth to upgrade it, and I have access to some behind-the-scenes knowledge to clarify a couple points in that they were trying to mainly use stuff they already have or weren't using and weren't trying to go for the best. But for the most part, the thinking process was right, but they ended up with some weird results, and I think it's super important to take a look at what they ended up with in order to really learn from their experience and kind of show you what mistakes not to make. This video is not obviously intended to just crap on Linus or their streaming setup or anything like that, or what they chose or did, because that's not useful, but rather to show you, very common mistakes that I see everyone make when it comes to setting up specific parts of your streaming setup, and how that might be able to keep other people of you from making those same mistakes, because I hate seeing it every time, and I hated seeing some of it here, but they fixed some of it in the YouTube video, I will say that.
Many people's first impulse when they want to improve their video quality is to upgrade their camera. But as you can see, I'm getting a dramatically better feed out of the same webcam that I started this video out with just by changing my lighting. So that's where we're gonna start.
Linus started out with the right choices. He's got a webcam and a mod mic and no real lighting. He wanted to upgrade that experience, so he went for new lighting, the Elgato Keylight Airs, fine. A new stream deck, great. A new microphone, new audio interface, new camera with a cam link. That thought process seems fine, totally fine. But then once he started getting set up, we had lovely clips like this.
Does this even look that much better than the webcam?
And this.
This is the mod mic, and this is the broadcast mic.
Which they then modified to change, and he switched to a Go XLR and then back to that interface, because that was just a quick cutting clip. So let's start with the camera. Lighting wise was fine. 2 Elgato Keylight Airs, 2 sides, flat lighting, mostly fine. No complaints there. His background's pretty boring. I would add something to the closet doors there, but whatever. Great choice. Getting a camera with a cam link, again, decent choice. The problem comes in the camera that was chosen. It was a Canon DSLR, which I continuously tell people to stop trying to use Canon DSLRs for streaming cameras because they don't provide clean HDMI out. What he ended up with was a 1080i interlaced, really messy video feed at some points with weird colors, with the autofocus box and all of the overlays on, and in order to turn off the box in front of his face, he had to turn on manual focus, and then for the samples in the original Floatplane video, it was completely out of focus, and he's questioning if it even looked better than his webcam. Now, they went back and added in new clips, and they ended up getting it to a better place once it was focused better and things like that, but it's still a very cropped and not ideal camera situation, because it's a Canon DSLR. If you're picking a streaming camera, and you're picking a real camera to use for that, unless it's like a 5D that you are certain has clean HDMI out, or a C200 or something, don't go Canon. They don't usually, or the M500 that they showed at CES, that has clean HDMI out. But otherwise, most Canon cameras don't. Go with the Sony, go with the Panasonic, go with the Fuji. Don't go with the Nikon, because most Nikons, other than the big high-end Z6 and stuff, completely turn off your camera after 30 minutes, but most of them are fine. Let's talk audio. He upgraded to a Behringer broadcast mic, which in and of itself is probably not that bad. I've never used that specific one. I'd love to try it, but totally fine. But then he ended up complimenting the mod mic heavily because the audio quality he got out of that broadcast mic was nowhere near great or any better than the mod mic. Now, the mod mic's a great mic. I've ran ads for them forever because I believe in them. They're pretty cool, and they were probably the right choice for his scenario, given that he apparently doesn't actually want a microphone blocking his face. But the problem comes in the interface. He used the Behringer UM2, which I have been told was the wrong choice, which is why they added in the Go XLR. But that is a very cheap audio interface, and I see this all the time. People get a very expensive microphone, like this Shure SM7B, an RE20, that Behringer broadcast mic, and then they spend $20 on an audio interface. Arguably, the audio interface is more important than the microphone you get. Makes more sense to get a big, nice, beefy audio hardware box that can handle any microphone you throw at it and get a cheap microphone now, because it will make that cheap microphone sound good, than to get a very expensive microphone and not be able to power it. And that's exactly what happened here. That interface could not provide anywhere near enough gain for that microphone, and the audio quality was poop. They added in the YouTube copy a clip where he added in a Go XLR, and it sounded a little bit better, but it didn't sound much better. And then he made a comment about this.
Small update, I did get my issues with the Go XLR sorted out, so I'm using that now. It might not have the most amazing reputation for audio quality either, but I really like a lot of the features and it's super easy to use, so.
This is a very common misconception about the Go XLR, and I really hope to dispel it as much as I can, because I hate that people keep perpetuating this. The Go XLR has Midas preamps, not Midas built like preamps, kind of like the UMC or UM204HE. These are genuine Midas preamps that are very expensive and incredibly high quality. They can power both the RE20, the Golden HD2, the the High LP R40, and the Shure SM7B without a cloud lifter, with clean up to 60 dB of gain. It has incredible preamps, the best preamps you can probably get in any sort of multifunction box for the price, period. This is not sponsored by them. Say what you will about literally everything else on it, but the raw audio quality you can get out of the Go XLR is some of the best bang for the buck, especially even in the Mini, that you can possibly get. Just the settings weren't right. He probably, from what it sounded like, there were none of the post-processing was applied. And the advantage of using high-end audio hardware is you get to start to add in equalization to balance things out properly, compression to make sure that your audio levels are, consistent, and that you sound, nice and boomy over top of your gameplay or what have you, and all of those things. And this was just kind of plugged in and was like, it don't sound good. And these are a lot of the comments that I get a lot of the time. It's, I threw this together, I chose the wrong things, the initial results aren't great, and both audio and video requires a lot of fine tuning. If you want to improve that, the Go XLR needed some compression, some EQ specific to Linus's voice, because his voice is, has a little bit of a higher pitch that could be smoothed out by a good EQ curve. Compressor could help balance his levels a bit, get him a little bit more presence over top his gameplay, and overall provide a pretty great audio experience. With this camera, the T6i, for all of the issues he ran into it, all he needed to do in the original clip was just focus it, and then moving on to upgrade from there. Maybe turn down the lights a bit so that they're not casting so much on the background, or make sure that the overhead lights, he may have just had the ceiling fan lights on in the background, turn that off, and you get a nice little contrast between what you have in front of you and what you have behind you. You could get a $20 colored light to cast up on the backdrop, sit it in the floor, and add a little splash of color. There's a lot that goes into building a streaming setup, and too frequently I see people grab these things that they see recommended from people like me, from other streaming channels, and throw them in a completely mismatched configuration because they either don't budget accordingly or don't want to put in the time to set it up, and you end up with lackluster results with what should be phenomenal hardware. You should never be buying, granted, they didn't buy pretty much, well, they may have bought some stuff, but the idea for this setup was not to buy anything, was to use what they had around. But you should never be buying upgrades to your hardware and then setting it up and your immediate thought is, wow, this doesn't look any better. If that's the case, you're probably missing something. There's a lot that can be done. There's a lot of videos on the internet. I was about to recommend my own. I don't actually have any videos about optimizing your in-camera settings, learning shutter speed, ISO, aperture for your lens, things like that. There's a lot that goes into that. Rule of thumb, at least shutter speed, it should be double your frame rate. So at 60 FPS, it should be 120 or 125. At 30 FPS, it should be 1/60. And then you optimize your ISO based on how bright your scene is from there. The lighting balance of having 2 key lights here and here works out pretty solid. You may want a kicker light depending on how dark your background is. Audio positioning in his video was good. The microphone arm positioning seemed like it would get annoying. You can get microphone arms that reach up over your monitor like I have, but otherwise, mic positioning and technique was all good. It's just a matter of getting the right hardware to back up the hardware that you have. All this being said, the actual WAN show production has actually been fairly solid from what I've seen, and I don't have any major complaints there. And Linus brought up a specific complaint that he has that a lot of people do about this style of production, and that he didn't want a big microphone in his face for the video. Now, I just recently released a video this week about tips for non-game streamers, wherein I say if you're doing teaching or something like that, it may not be considered appropriate to have a microphone in the frame, at which point you could use a lavalier microphone for your stream. You'll just have to manage the wires or battery life for wireless kits. Deity has a interview wireless microphone kit that I highly recommend. You can go with something like that, or you can get little shotgun microphones or pencil condenser microphones that you mount in different places. And in that video, I even have a sample of a cheaper, just super basic shotgun mic mounted on my monitor just off frame, and how great that sounded without needing something like this in my face. So go check out that video. But just wanted to provide a little bit of a critique of, you know, what he's got going on. Due to the cropping and everything, I felt like the camera angle was like super crunched in on his face. I prefer a little bit of a wider view, but I guess if you don't have that much like in your room, if it's just an empty wall, you don't really need that wide of a view. So it depends on, you know, what your production needs are. Hope this was helpful to you. Hope you enjoyed the video. Go check out Linus' streaming setup, linked in the video description below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe for more stream guides and stream critique. Sign up for him if you want your stream critiqued in this series. That's what I normally do in the show.